Welcome in to this episode of the Hunting Happiness Podcast with Chris P. Austin. Today we have on a super special guest, Olympian Jordan Cheng is in the building, my man. So today what we're getting into this episode is I want to know from Jordan what it takes to go to an Olympics. That is essentially going to be the first and last thing that we start and finish with. And in between, we're going to get a whole lot of information about where he's been, where he currently is, where he wants to go. And I'm going to learn a bunch. I'm going to be a facilitator. I'm going to help make this a great experience for you guys who are listening. So for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you subscribe on YouTube or any of the podcast hosting platforms. Just type in Chris P. Austin. You'll be able to find this episode and others. And right away, jump yourself in the comments. I want you guys to let us know what you thought about this episode. I want you to let us know what you want to hear about in the future. If you guys have questions for JC on the live, make sure you throw them in and we'll get them answered. So starting right away, how would you answer that question of how, if you were to give it one key, two or three keys, however you want to answer it, how do you get to an Olympics?
Woo, right on the spot. That's a big question. I think I'm kind of coming from like a blue collar mindset.
Sure.
I think you got to outwork anyone.
Okay.
And obviously there's certain people with, if you're 6'5", 6'6", that helps
Totally.
as a girl.
Totally.
But the biggest thing I think of is I think you got to know yourself well and what you bring to the table and figure out how you can create a competitive advantage.
That's super strong.
And I think there's a lot of good teams out there. But then like how can we become great and what can set us apart? Maybe the second cue is something we've been diving into a lot, is really finding out what's repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of hoping that we can, at the right time or at the right moment perform and make the right play, kind of fall back on our skill and confidence that what we bring to the table is going to show up, and we're confident that's going to show up.
Super strong. Love it. So everybody out there who's listening, we're going to figure out who we is when Jordan says we. He's had the opportunity to work with some really high-level athletes really throughout the last 5, 6, 7 years of his life. But specifically, us just coming off this Olympics, when you're listening to this, we're a year outside of, we're really 6 months outside of the most recent Olympics, right after the COVID year. So what was pushed from 2020 to 2021, Jordan's just coming off of being the coach of the Olympic team of Kelly Clays and Sarah Sponsel at the most recent Olympics in 2021 for sand and beach volleyball. So I want to get into next a little bit about your upbringing and playing experience. So a lot of people out there think that you have to have been a great player to be a great coach, or that you have to have played at all to be a great coach. And they want to dive into your experience and background. So you being a person who's got a pretty interesting upbringing when it comes to volleyball, share a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, when it comes to the whole playing experience, my story is unique because I feel like every time I tried pursuing playing at a high level, some coaching opportunities came up. But I grew up, obviously Asian household. And I love playing sports, played volleyball, basketball, tennis. Thought I was all right at them. But I didn't even know what college sports was. And so when I went to Chapman University, found out that there's such things as college sports. I'm like, I would have dreamed of doing this. I would absolutely, I feel like I could have been a pretty good, setter.
Right.
So I started the club team at Chapman, got to play a couple of years, and just absolutely fell in love with volleyball. I played, I feel like every basketball player, you think you're pretty good.
Sure.
I was 5'8", 107 pounds.
Okay.
So my license picture, junior year. And so senior year, I went all in volleyball, and I think that's when it all started. I freaking love this sport. And so in terms of playing experience after Chapman, I wanted to play professionally indoor. I didn't really have any film or anything. I didn't know the steps of that.
Right.
And I remember interning with USA Volleyball that summer, and kind of being around the best players in the world.
Yeah, I remember seeing him there.
I was shagging balls, just keeping score, getting yelled at by Rich Lamborn.
Yeah.
I teased him for that. I just learned a lot and ended up getting a job at Pepperdine with Marv Dunphy for the men's indoor volleyball team.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right, maybe I can learn a lot with this job and then go play indoor.
Sure.
Because you can't say no to this kind of opportunity.
Right.
Marv, gold medalist, 4-time national championship coach, and after that year, again, tried to play abroad. and then ended up at Concordia, and I was the graduate assistant coach. I tried playing there, but I think with like the 4-year rule, it was tough. And then that's when I kind of met you, because I got the job at UC Irvine, where again, I wanted to play indoor, and then I wanted to play beach professionally, because I was playing beach for fun.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I can't say no to UC Irvine. Like, I'm 24. Here's a sweet opportunity to coach at a program that won, I think, 4 national championships in the last like 8 years at that time when I entered. And it was like after UC Irvine, like I'll go play AVPs in like professional beach.
Okay.
And so, I don't know if this is more than you wanted, but
no,
okay.
This is perfect. I think this is exactly what the audience wants to hear. I mean, what's so unique about your story that I find, and like JC just said, we ended up meeting in the USA gym. Actually, I remember you being in there, because there was a little stint in time where I was practicing with those guys, and there was Reed Pretty in there and Rich Lamborn, and that atmosphere is so intoxicating for somebody who comes from not growing up seeing that. You know, it's different, I feel like, especially today, where people have YouTube and they have Instagram to be able to go on and see this stuff. They can go see international volleyball, you know, by typing in a couple buttons. But coming up right in that era where you weren't able to so easily type stuff in and get content, being able to see yourself, and like I remember the experience for myself, it being so intoxicating. So that's what it sounds like for you. It's like you, while having these desires to play, you know, through college, through pro, through all these situations, the thing that kept curving you or sending you in a different direction was these coaching opportunities, which it sounds like for you they felt really impressive at the time. Like Marv Dunphy, such a historic name in volleyball, Irvine, and then USA, even being around those guys. So if you had to say to somebody out there who found relation to what you said, they're like, look, I'm a little bit later to learning the game, but I feel this passion. I'm not sure if opportunities are going to come my way. Is there any kind of advice you would give them for how to at least critically think about their process?
Yeah. You know, when I was thinking about just the idea of like this podcast, like Hunting Happiness, I was kind of thinking about like contentment. And, you know, for me, like I struggled with this a lot, because I think I compared a lot.
Sure.
And it's like, well, I don't have that playing experience. And then the more I coach, is like, I don't have that coaching experience. Like, I'll never be a Marv Dunphy. I'll never, you know, Mark Prescio, legend at Irvine. He's like 30 years of coaching. Right. And here it is, like I'm my 2nd year in. I'm like, well, what can I bring to the table? You know, I want to be like Prescio. I want to be like, you get on the beach, you have Rich Lamborn coaching, Jose Loyola, Patty Dodd. You know, all these people like that have been around the sport for like more than my age. And so I think my advice was, I think comparison is so deadly. Yes. I think comparison kills contentment. And so what I had to learn was try not to compare myself to others, and figuring out, well, what does Jordan Cheng bring? Right. I don't want to be the JV version of Chris Austin. Like, I want to be the varsity version of Jordan Cheng. And so I think that kind of helped me create a path for myself, and just taking a deep dive. Right, Jordan, like what are you good at? You know, what do you love to do? When are you at your best? And again, how can you create a competitive advantage that no other coach can bring? Like, well, I'm single. I'm, you know, after Irvine, I got the job with Reed Pretty. And I'm looking at all these coaches, like, I'm single, and I know I can outwork anyone. Because all these coaches, they have families, they're older, they have all these obligations. And I spent like hours and hours coding volleyball matches from the FIVB World Tour, trying to learn the game. And figure out what are the top teams in the world doing. And like, I think maybe because I didn't know any better, but I really didn't know any better. Like, I wanted to learn the game. I wanted to see what the best players in the world are doing. I think sometimes the older you get as a coach, the more set in your ways. It's like, well, this is what we did, and we've always done it this way.
No, that's like huge. And I can see that when I watch you coach, you know, like something I was listening to while you guys were at this most recent Olympics, and not to give away all the details in advance here, but you guys had a very interesting system, and you guys had a system that a lot of people would think that females wouldn't be capable of executing on a consistent basis, right? And so watching it, and me going, there's totally an engineer behind this. There's totally somebody looking at what are the numbers? Not just what looks fancy, what looks cool, but who is our personnel? What are the numbers? What are we capable of, like you said, replicating?
Yeah.
And can we do it in any environment? And I'm sure you'll end up talking about it a little bit. So again, I don't want to give it away, but I think in that last couple, even weeks leading up to the Olympics, you had some very clear questions. I had run into you, and I remember you asking one specific thing that I'm going to want to get into when we get to that Olympic experience about your team, how you guys would handle certain situations.
Yeah.
So the thing I'm really taking away for you guys out there who are listening to this is Jordan, to be able to be more content, to use his word, had to find the varsity version of himself. I think that's a really cool way to put it. Like, rather than deciding to be the JV version of somebody who already exists, like finding the varsity version of yourself, that is like a concept that could be on a bumper sticker, right? Like, just so cool. So how does all this relate to your happiness? Like, where you find yourself now, going through your upbringing, like, would you say that happiness is something that you have? And that answer can be fill in the blank. It doesn't have to be a yes or no.
Yeah, I would say happiness is something I have. You know, when I think of happiness, it's coming from like a faith-based background, being Christian. I think of the word joy. And I think happiness, or however you look at it, like it can't be conditional, I guess. Right. And so like, where do I find joy? And I think I'll find joy in whatever circumstance. You know, so whether we're winning, losing, whether we qualified or not. So I think that's where when I think of like being content, like I think of like finding joy in where you're at.
Yes.
But then I think of like being satisfied. Am I satisfied? Like, heck no. I'm not even close. I will never be satisfied with where I'm at, because I think I'll always want, as humans, we always want more.
Right.
Like nothing's ever good enough. And so it's kind of balancing out like that chasing game and that belief of like, well, this is where I want to go. This is who I think I can become. But also like, are you content with like where, like, are you happy? You know what I mean? And so I would say I am pretty joyful with where I'm at and stoked with where I'm at, but I think I'll always be dreaming of more. More.
So what I hear in there is like the journey of joy, right? Like trying to utilize the way that you go about these events and the way that you pursue these events, like creating joy for you. Because like the thing that stuck out to me with what you said there was, it wasn't going to be about whether you qualified, but really the road to the qualification, you know? So like USA Volleyball had this saying, like the road to Tokyo or whatever the case, and that being like the motto of the preparation and the pursuit of going, and you having been a part of it, you know, like it's interesting that like you find the word joy, and for so many people, I'm very curious, you know, when I ask them, that's why I have a podcast like this of like, what do they think that happiness is? You know, what is an individual's vision of happiness? Is it something that is subjective? Is it objective? Is it something that can have concrete nature? And the answer tends to be no. Like, happiness for one person can be different than another, but can the characteristics be the same? You know, when I'm teaching people who like come to me, clients who are like, I want to master mentality, I want to find happiness. I go, is there, you know, do I just have to have this great instinct on like being able to connect to a person and find what it is for them or help them find what it is for them? Or is there, can there be a blueprint, you know? And so urgency ideology is like, it's the fourth phase in my 6-phase process. And it's this concept I essentially goes over pursuing perfection, but then realizing at the end of the day, perfection won't come. Like, it's literally the pursuit of, if I'm in a sand volleyball training and my trainer is serving me 10 balls, every individual ball I'm looking to visually, technically, verbally perfect it. But then at the end of the training, if I passed or techniqued or verbalized 4 out of the 10 reps perfect, as long as I feel like I gave everything I had mentally, physically, emotionally, like I'm going to be happy for that day. And then tomorrow, I'm going to pursue perfection. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay with the result. Like, I feel like that concept could save lives. Like, it could just save lives, because you find so many people who are like neurotic, right, in their nature of pursuit, that if they get it imperfect, they're pissed. They're upset. They're unhappy. But if they do get it correct for that day, if it's I got my 10 out of 10, you know, on the spot, they've arrived. It's like there's nowhere to go from here.
Yeah.
And then the next day it's like, well, I only got 8, so I've got worse type situations.
Yeah.
So for sand volleyball, like, what's your opinion on that? Like, sand volleyball is such an imperfect sport, right? Like, you never watch a game that is like, oh, they passed and killed every single ball. They went 1,000% side outs. 1,000% aces. Like, it doesn't happen. So what are some of the techniques you have found or utilized, even in this last like little year here, since being at an Olympics, that you think would be valuable?
It's a great question. We spent so much time on this with Kelly and Sarah, because they're so young, and they're like, when you have this big of a goal, like, you want to hold on to and like squeeze, you start squeezing and pressing, and then you start attaching your identity to this pursuit. And so it's like, hey, the Olympics is great, but like, let's pursue something bigger, like something that maybe we'll never ever reach, and it's a stepping stone to get there. But I think some cues or things that helps is the players I work with, so Kelly and Sarah, they're such high level athletes, and they demand so much out of themselves.
Right.
And so a saying we used was, perfect is the enemy of good. And so often, I'll use Kelly as an example. I love telling this story, but we're playing this Chinese team, and she's a really good option hitter, right? And Sarah passes the ball, she options it, it hits the sand, no one's within 10 feet of it, no one even dove for it, clean kill. And she turns around just like visibly frustrated, and she's pissed off. And I'm like, it's like a month working with her, so I'm getting to know a little bit. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, April Ross would have dug that. Like, I it's way too high, I'm like, okay, like, interesting, right? And it's that perfectionist mindset. And then a couple plays later, another option kill. Clean sand, no one dives for it. Just like, an amazing play. And she's even more pissed. And you can see it like start affecting like her psyche. And I'm like, Kelly, like, what's going on? She's like, I showed it too early. Like, every top team would have dug that.
Right.
And so I think that's a good example. Like, that's the danger of pursuing perfection, because it's something you'll never ever attain.
Yeah.
And we were up 15-7, and all of a sudden we're down 16-18, partially because there's this like frustration of like, gosh, like, I need to be better, and I'm not playing well right now. It's like, you just got 2 great kills.
Yeah.
And so I think trying to have perspective of, big question I ask a lot is like, why? Like, why are you pursuing the Olympics? Like, why are we going for this? Why are we doing this? Why do we want to get to this point? So I think if you don't know why, then you can get lost in all the results.
Yeah.
So
knowing your why, that's freaking strong. That story is like, how many youth players out there listening to this? How many coaches like see that? It's when you have your best player, your most competitive player, and they have fooled themselves into thinking that the pursuit is all about the visual, I think, like how it looks. And it's like that concept, you picking up on that is actually really impressive, because I think a lot of people aren't conscious of that. They're not conscious of how the results of something are affecting somebody. They literally just look at the results. They go, oh, we're up 15-7, we're in great shape. I'm just over here in my own world. They're not really watching the player and seeing how they're intaking it. How do you intake success? Because a lot of people have vice versa. You were talking about Kelly referencing April and for those of you who don't know who April Ross is, she's like a multi-time Olympian, has won the bronze, the silver, and the gold at this point now. So pretty impressive player. And so that's who she was referencing. But ultimately, it's not really about if April would have done that. Like, we're not playing April.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like,
exactly.
In this situation, is what you're doing enough to create what you want, right? Is that like the concept? So being able to separate training from match, that's like the sticky environment that I get into with humans, whether they're talking about business. So training a lawyer to get prepared for trial, or training a parent to get ready to have an actual child. Training an athlete to get ready for a match. It's this debate of, do we practice how we play? Really? Is it really that way? Like, a lot of coaches say that. You'll practice how you play. I go, really? Is it that way? Like, do we actually feel the same, or is it a different environment? Like, if we're being honest, it's we can train it symmetrically. We can say, hey, this is what'll happen in matches, and we're going to simulate this, and we're going to do that. But is it really that way? Can you simulate how you'll feel in the third set of an Olympics, you know, playing Brandy and her partner. Can you simulate that, right? It's like, we can try and we can get creative, but ultimately the best option you have actually probably has nothing to do with touching the ball. Yeah. Like, it's being able to see it. It's being able to feel it, like, internally. And to go back to your example, is it worth your time, right? That's what it sounds like you are asking these athletes. Is it really worth it? Or is it worth the frustration of that poke play to lose your focus and then be down? Yeah. You know, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have a carefree attitude? And so I want to dive in like deeper to that when we get to this Olympic run, because I want the people listening to this to understand how special it is to go to an Olympics. Like, in sand volleyball, an Olympics, unless it's COVID, happens every 4 years. Oh. Not every weekend like an AVP in the summer. It's every 4 years, and it's a 2-week tournament. Yep. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a 2-week tournament. And 4 humans get to go for each gender every 4 years. 4 humans on Earth for each country, 4 humans from each country get to go every 4 years. Like, it's such a journey. Like, it's trust, it's qualification, it's hard times, it's good times, it's all these things. And once you get there, did you feel like there's this like aha moment? Are you like, does it feel like any other tournament? Does it feel like high pressure? Like, what did it feel like for you? You can only really speak for you, but what did it feel like for you? Yeah, it's you try so hard as a coach, like, prepare them for that, right? But like you said, you won't ever be able to replicate that 15, you're down in the third set of an Olympic game. Yeah. And so it's something like you'll never ever experience, and that's why experience goes a long way. Like, you can't necessarily teach experience or maturity. Right. You have to go through some things in life that, like, I think Kelly and Sarah and myself, like, we learned so much after this Olympic experience that is preparing us for hopefully the next one. Yeah, because you look and you go, why are people often able to replicate at every level? Yeah. It's always been so interesting to me. You can have players who are more physical. You can have players who are taller, stronger, run faster, whatever. Yeah. But why does it seem like old and steady? You know, seems to always find a way. Why is it that April can just continuously, like, different partner, different situation? I've gone with this person and that person, but I'm there. Why are they like the common denominator? And you can look at April strong. Yeah. She's fast and she's taller than most defenders. It's like there's something about their process that allows them to string together memory. Yeah. Like, and not just like old school muscle memory, right? Mm-hmm. But like string together what works, what doesn't. Yeah. Talking to myself like this works. Talking to myself like this doesn't. Worrying about these things works. Worrying about these things doesn't. And you just see it, right? You see it in professional sports where somebody with so much talent and potential has so-so results, right? And there's somebody who with talent and potential has great results, especially at a professional level. So what would you say to that? Like, what things, quick nuggets have you learned in this process of going from not supposed to be at the Olympics, right, to we're here and we're making waves, like we're beating people, right? Like we're making waves. Like, what little nuggets did you really take away that'd be worth mentioning? Yeah, it's all up here. Yeah, like 100%. I think obviously you have to be pretty good to make it to the Olympics, but I think to win it and be great, that's why April is as good as she is. It's like, I call it the April Ross effect. Like there's this aura that she gives off. And it's super reliable, it's super steady, it's super like gritty, and they can be down, and April's like, we're going to win, so it's like this kind of like mentality, like we're going to win, and I'm going to do something about it. And so I think a lot of it is like like this deep rooted confidence in yourself, in your team, no matter what the circumstances are. And you look at Kelly and Sarah, the youngest USA team to ever qualify for Olympics. And I think it showed, right? Because there's a lot of ups and downs, and it's easy to be a great teammate. It's easy to buy into the system. It's easy to be all in when you're up, 12-4 the team. Yeah. But when you're down, 17-19 or whatever in the second set, if you lose this and you're out, then all of a sudden, like, it's a lot harder to fall back on that confidence. Yes. And so I think these older athletes often, more often than not, have this like security and a deep rooted, I think, confidence and belief. Okay. That doesn't sway based on situation. Yeah, that's that's something for me in my profession. What I do now is like, it's my obsession almost, like the curiosity of like, why are those who are at the top of the food chain in every craft, like, why do they often stay?
Yeah.
Like, why does there not seem to be this cyclical effect
Yeah.
to who's at the top in year one versus the next year? Why is it that in your sport, Carrie and Misty could literally, like, people don't understand. All it takes is one bad loss, and how can you gold medal? Like, what are you learning? What are you intaking? How can we bottle that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it can't just be like there's some humans who are born to do this. It's like, no, there's something about their process, right? And so you talk about April, quickly, she has this like aura you use, and I use that word. Like, she has this aura, this confidence of like, we're gonna win. And so like, I'll see youth try to just speak it. Yeah. Like, no, we're gonna win, guys, and we're down. And I'm like, that's empty. It's empty because there's not work behind that, right? There's not real work. So when I say work, I understand you know what I'm talking about. Like, what type of work do you believe that is? That goes into an April, a Kelly Clays, a Sarah Sponsor, like to reach an area that's so thin. The air's so thin. It's like 4 freaking people.
Crazy.
Every 4 years, like, and it's a dogfight to get there. Like, it's a dogfight at the end. There's so many people hungry for it. There's people planning for it now for the next one. I'm gonna set up all my ducks in a row. I'm gonna spend all the money I have, get coaches, weights. What's the difference?
I'm a big quote guy, so there's a couple quotes I thought of, and I probably say way too much with my girls, but you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your preparation. I firmly believe that, because I think, I guess another quote to kind of tie into that is, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Okay. I think it's so easy to be like, everyone has the same goal. Everyone wants to go to the Paris 2024 Olympics and win a gold medal. Just because you want it badly enough, and just because you try to speak it out loud, doesn't mean it's going to happen. Right. Or like, when in the moment that matters, like, I'm gonna rise to the occasion, like, we got this. Like, I think there's more to it. It's that preparation. Like, do you have that work that you're saying to fall back onto that legitimizes it? And April, like, it's crazy watching her train, because she's one of the best players. She's won all these medals, and then after practice she'll do like diving lines. Right. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Like what? Like, you gotta be kidding me. It doesn't make sense. But that's what I found in common with, I think, a lot of the high level athletes. And we try to outwork any other team, and we did a lot outside of volleyball too. So we had a bunch of team meetings, like whiteboard sessions. Try to dive into like team culture and mentality. And I think it helped a little bit, but again, some things you just can't replace. I think experience. Yeah. No, it's so interesting and ironic that you say that, because I track multiple crafts. It's like, again, it's my job. But let's stick to sports. I look at like a Steph Curry. Let's look at an April Ross. And let's look at a Serena Williams. All different sports, but similar habits in what you say that I've gotten to witness with my own eyes personally in person. Like, I've gotten to be out there at 16th Street, Hermosa Beach, watching April when her partner isn't at practice because she has her own practice session earlier, which is something some volleyball teams do. Sometimes they practice separate, sometimes together, or one's earlier, one's later, whatever team systems are. But I've watched her myself come out before coaches, before partner, before the cameras and interviews for the Olympics, and stand and shoot the corner 50 times, and then cut 50 times, and then visualize the defense. And this isn't the practice, that's the pre-practice, right? This is the self-prep. So when I'm like listening from a distance and I'm doing my own training and I hear just in front of you, like right by the side, whatever the terminology is that the team uses, I go like, none of it's accidental. It's all visualized, it's trained, it's planned out. So when you have it on the big stage, and there were some battles with them and the Canadians, right, for who's going to be number one in the AVP, and when you guys came in the mix and started like bulldozing everybody at the end, double tournament win and getting it going, I watch and I go, when you don't have to think about it is when it becomes like, and some people call it a habit, some people call it a tendency, but when you get to the point where you don't have to think about it, that's like when it's special. Because I watch so many people, they try to
in the moment during the match, they try to think of all the concepts. Like, what did I write down? What did I say? It's like, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late at that point. It has to be ingrained. Like, it's my second nature. When this happens, I do this.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so like you said, being able to train that is the whole game of a coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how can I best prepare them for what's going to come?
Yeah.
Like, you seem to just have done a freaking amazing job with it in such a short amount of time. Like, you haven't been doing this as long as a lot of these people. You were like young boy days when Rich Lamborn was like playing for a gold medal as an indoor Olympian. So you being able to speed up this experience, you know, it's not by luck that you ended up at the Olympics. It's not by happenstance. Like, I watched the preparation. I watched you in Huntington Beach when it was the windiest freaking day I had ever seen, like, out there putting in work. Like, this is how we're going to play in the wind. I've watched you in Hermosa, in Huntington. I watched you when it's just Kelly, when it's Kelly and a partner. I've watched you like through this process. I got the opportunity to watch you indoor with Irvine and see you in the office, like responding to emails and watching video and prepping stuff. So you seem to have found a way to shorten the time necessary on this experience to achieve a high level. So what would you say if there was somebody who were like, no, I see that in Jordan too. No, I see he has been able to defy the generic 10,000 hours rule, or this time that we hear is so necessary. Like, you need to be 40 to be a great coach. You need to have coached for 10 years to go to an Olympics. Like, what do you say, being somebody who has disproven that?
Gosh. I think just trying to protect perspective and have a growth mindset.
Okay.
I've gone to work with a lot of great coaches and a lot of maybe not so great coaches, and then you take away I think the strengths of each, and then you also learn like, well, I don't want to ever do this with my players.
Sure.
So I think just studying, like you said, like you've studied so many high level athletes, and so I think I've tried really studying even just outside of volleyball, like common tendencies.
Yes.
And if every person that I've ever looked up to has been journaling and reading, then I'm like, okay, there's something to it. I'm gonna start diving into that, because it's not by accident that these people are all crazy, insanely successful and influential in their field of what they do. So I picked up journaling and reading, and so I think it's kind of that the willingness to learn and just studying what works and figuring out, like, all right, what's given in front of you, and how are you going to bring out the best in them.
Wow. Super strong. I hope some of you are writing this down as we speak right now. So what was your transition like from college indoor? You were working with Dunphy, you were at Irvine when we met, and I remember there was a period in time, for those of you listening to this, there's a period in time I was wanting to have Jordan come with me and work with like a group of young players, and he was working at Irvine doing his thing, and I just remember hearing the grapevine. Actually, no, I might have called you. It was some kind of contact that we had, and you told me, like, I'm not working indoor anymore. Like, I'm working with Reed Pretty down in like CDM area or Huntington area. Like, how did that come to be? Because I remember Reed was like, I'm gonna pursue Reed Pretty. For those of you who don't know, four-time indoor Olympian. I had the pleasure of like training with him with the national team in Anaheim for a couple summers in a row. He's just like, that guy's forgotten more volleyball than like some of us will ever learn. But he ended up taking on Jordan, so I'll let you tell more of the story. But how did that happen, that transition?
Yeah, I mean, kind of my life story. Like, after Irvine, I'm like, now's my time to play beach, and then Reed Pretty was looking for a coach, and he was playing with Jeremy K-Sphere. And I knew Reed from the indoor days when I was probably handing him a bunch of balls I shagged. But I think I've always wanted to run my own program for indoor. Yes. So I was at Irvine with the hope and intention of someday becoming a head coach. But I think beach volleyball has like always been where my heart's at, just because I'd always go play. That's where you could play pickup games, CBVA, and want to do AVP. And so when I had the opportunity with Reed, I'm like, all right, here's another job opportunity that seems like I can't say no to. Here's another job opportunity that I'm like, all right, maybe after this I'm gonna learn something and I'll play pro. So on a side note, like my story, like I was so bitter about not being able to play. college, not being able to play pro. I think I had to work through some things of like, again, finding that happiness, finding that contentness, or like where I'm at. And for me, again, with the faith part, like where God has me. And so when Reed and I connected, I'm like, I'm all in. Like I would love to coach beach. I would love to work with, I think, one of the best players to have played, for indoor men.
Totally.
And just learn from him.
Yeah.
A lot of his like, actually the majority of my career, Chris, I'm like telling all my friends like, how did I get here? Like what is going on? Like a little bit of like shock and awe. And I think it's cool being around you and Irvine, because I think some of that was cultivated into like confidence.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm very confident, but then also like I'm still like in awe like what I get to do.
Yeah.
It's just really like neat. Like I'm just so grateful and thankful. Like I can't. If you were to ask the Jordan from 10 years ago, no way would I imagine this.
Yeah. Such a cool space to be.
Yeah.
Such a coal space to be.
And so Reed invited me, and I was like, I'm all in. And so got to travel the world with him on FIVBs and work with him for like a year and a half.
Yeah. Would you say that that's where your greatest learning curve came? And again, this can be more fill in the blank style. It doesn't have to be yes or no. With understanding how international sand volleyball works and the Olympic qualifying process.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. It was a crazy grind, because only the top 4 USA teams get stipend. Especially travel stipend. So we were like the 5th ranked team for that entire year and a half.
Okay.
So Reed had to pay for everything out of his own pocket.
Wow.
And so I saw the grind and the struggle. I'm like, if you don't have money, like gosh, like it's easy to say I want to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And then you realize, crap, I don't have any points. I gotta pay for everything.
Yeah.
And if I lose, I don't make any. I mean, you can win and you make barely any prize money. And so it for sure opened up the eyes of like, all right, this Olympic pursuit on the beach is a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
Kelly, Sarah, and I, we went to Stad for a 4-star, and I lost like $1,900 from that trip.
No way.
You're losing money a lot of times when you go on these trips. Stad's an extreme example because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
But we finished 9th, which is
beautiful.
It's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Man.
But finished 9th, which isn't the worst finish. But I lost a bunch of money, so I'm like, gosh, like, I'm figuring out how to do this for the rest of my life, and so the financial piece is a big piece.
Yeah, and so, without going too deep into this, because this isn't really the point, but I'm curious, like, from what I've learned in my years of pursuing FIVB, I did that for about a year and a half. I was like, okay, I'm going to start learning about the points process, and I'm going to go to some of these places like Qatar and the Cook Islands, and so for you, what ways have you learned to stagger these two responsibilities of playing and training at a high level but being able to afford it, and how have you been able to stymie like the challenge of the financial piece? Is that sponsorships? Is that pocket money for a while and you proving that you could win? Is that you having somebody come down from above and hand you like what's the situation?
Yeah, I come from a very like financial background, and so I think it'd be naive for me to I get to coach at this level, I could do this for the rest of my life without also planning and prepping for the financial piece. Again, like USA helps, and like very grateful for that, but it's not enough to live alone, make a living, and so. I mean, I don't know like the advice or even like mindset, but I'm trying to figure out how to like grow my money exponentially, and not just make get a 10 grand raise. Like, that's not life changing stuff. You're still going to struggle. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do that, piece that together right now.
Yeah, I'd love to brainstorm some of that off camera with you for sure.
All
right. So, man, we're just picking up some gold here. So, questions on happiness for you. When in your life have you felt most happy? And again, this is a little fill in the blank. Is that right now, this moment? Is that when I was at the Olympics? Is that right before the Olympics? Is that when I found out I qualified? Is that when I got engaged? For those of you who don't know, we're going to get into that. Is that when I was playing, sand volleyball at the CBVA with no worries? Like, what's your situation?
The moment I think of is, and this kind of goes back to like my desire to play. I think after Reed and Theo Brunner, they wanted to pursue 2021 Olympics or 2020, and the team broke up, and then so our Olympic hopes like died, and I was like devastated, and that means I wasn't coaching them. That means I wasn't getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like crap. Like I'm out of a job.
Right.
And I think I was like, well, I think I'm getting the point that God wants me to coach. Now I want to play, obviously, but the moment that I think that helped shifted like my happiness and being like content in every situation was like the moment like being at peace with like me coaching. And so I think there's things like I desire and dream of versus like there's things I think like I'm meant to like I'm created for, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm not gonna always get everything out of it. Take for example, being single.
Right.
When I decided that I wanted to thrive being single and like I enjoy it and I want to take full advantage of being single, I think that was a big flip also where like I learned how to be content and joyful with where I'm at. Versus like it's so hard, you're always like, well, I can't wait to have a girlfriend someday. I can't wait to be in a relationship.
Right.
And you're always wishing and thinking of ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of the time you get it and you're like, dang, like my happiness hasn't changed.
Right.
I'm still more.
Right.
Same, you win a gold medal, like there's all these interviews and documentaries of Olympians winning gold, and then now they're like, now what do I do? Like, now what's my life's purpose?
Right.
And so I think the playing and coaching and also like the singleness, that helped me learn how to be content and joyful with like the here and now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
It's freaking amazing, strong. And I think it's an important lesson for everybody out there who's like looking for something tangible they can touch. Like, I ask that question pretty frequently.
Yeah.
It's a primary question I ask here to the clients I work with, to the people in my life. I ask them about happiness. It's such a taboo topic. It's odd to me. Like, people don't want to touch it, or they want to wrap around it, or they want to act like it's not what it is. And I want to find out, like, what is it? Because I think what most people find, I think what a lot of people find, I'm not going to go majority, but a lot of people find is that if they were to say out loud what would make them happy, they would realize it's nothing like what they're actually doing. Like, what they're doing and what would make them happy have no relation.
Yeah.
And I think that makes people feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so for me in my job, I'm searching for that discomfort. I'm like, I'm inviting that discomfort. I promote it.
Yeah.
Like, it's really the only way. So for you, you've had to go through some turbulence. And a lot of people would listen to this and they'd go, he went to the Olympics and he's younger than most people and he's in like a great spot. It's like now they're hearing, there was freaking like times I questioned
For sure.
if I wanted this, I wanted that. It's like no human being goes without that. But the response is like the crucial piece. So,
and Chris, maybe before I forget, because I think there's something important for me is, like I can tell someone like, oh, happiness is you go, make X amount of money, or you go get this job, but I think it's all relative and depends on each person. And so, I think a big piece is understanding like who you are, right? And I think that's where you'll find happiness. So, question I like is like when are you most fulfilled?
Yeah.
Like, where do you find the most fulfillment?
yeah.
And for me, it's conversations like this. It's investing in relationships.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm, I think, at the best version of myself. And so, in terms of like pursuing and figuring out what makes me happy, is like those, putting myself in positions where I get to do that.
Yeah.
And that might be different for someone else, because someone might be like, I don't want to talk to anyone.
Right.
And so it's like, well, go find out like what makes your heart like
Yeah.
beat. Well, like what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
And like I can't go to bed sometimes. I'm a big sleeper, but I can't go to bed sometimes because I'm so excited about a conversation I had with someone or the opportunity to dive into life with someone.
Right.
So I think that was a big piece of like, like what gifts have I been given, and what do I like? How do I enjoy using that? I think that helped piece together some things.
Man, that's like, if there's adults and youth, non-athletes, athletes listening to this, like, you guys got to make sure you're writing in these comments, like, what you're taking away from this, because this stuff that you're sharing right now is like, it's freaking life-changing, man. Like, for me, I can remember my happiest moments in life, and right now I can honestly say I am, like, happy. Like, I have zero worries. I do not stress. Like, my perspective is on point. It's tight. Like, that doesn't mean that there's not things that get misplaced in my life. That doesn't mean that there's things that are not sad, but the happiness is on point for me, and my whole goal is to be able to like enlighten people on how to achieve theirs. So I think that concept that you just put out, it's actually what we talked about last podcast. It's like knowing who you are and like transitioning who you are from who you want to be. Not like who you were born as, not who your parents say you are, not who your culture says you are, like, but knowing who you want to be and like literally reverse engineering everything to that. Like, but it's a challenge for most people. They don't believe like they'll be able to do it financially. They don't believe they'll be able to be supported. They'll be without friends ditching them, that sort of thing. Like, and that's the challenge for people. So being really in tune with self, that's the thing I keep hearing about you. Like, even though you're in this profession of team sport, it's like your financial success is actually predicated on what the team does. You're not on the court. Like, your financial success is predicated on what you keep saying, all these other people's decisions, what Reed Pretty chooses, what the runner chooses, what Kelly chooses. Like, but you being able to have this content nature, that's arrived because of your understanding of self and knowing your why. Like, that's what you're saying. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge for people to understand, because today is a lot about what society and how they're responding. Like, if I'm on Instagram, are people liking, are people commenting, like, or am I good without any of that? Like, that's a really important question for the youth and adults to be asking themselves. So these Olympics, again, like, it's just such an impressive feat for me, like, to be able to go to the Olympics and in general, and to be able to be in medal contention and to be able to do all these things. But your Olympic road, for the people who don't know, give us a quick synopsis of how it works. What's necessary to go from I'm not in the Olympics to I am in the Olympics? What are some quick keys to know to get there?
Yeah, so the Olympic qualification, the process works is they take your best 12 finishes internationally, and so you can play in 14 tournaments, and they'll take your best 12. So some people played in as many as possible, some people were selective, but basically you got to have good finishes, and you're looking to medal in tournaments. Rarely, I think, do teams make it to Olympics by getting a bunch of nines.
Right.
So,
So what was the difference for you guys? Because there was this race happening, right, in the most recent Olympics, and COVID played a part in everybody's training cycle, because for a little while there, like, beaches were closed in California, so people were like sneaking sessions type situations. So it was April and Alex, April Ross and Alex Kleinman in the driver's seat, like clear basically the whole time, And then there was this battle of like 3 or 4 teams, right? You had like the legend Carrie Walsh is in there, along with her partner Brooke Sweat, who had been to an Olympics. There's you guys, the young guns. There's Emily Day.
Emily Stockman and Kelly Kolinsky.
There's like a little dogfight happening where, like, I literally remember social media having these like standings of like, this is what this team needs to do to get there. It's like watching Sports Center, you know, and they're like, for the Cowboys to do this, they have to da-da-da-da. So I thought that was really interesting. So what was it for you guys, not conceptually or behind the scenes, but in literal finishes, that turned the tide? When did your tide turn to the driver's seat?
We had 2 more tournaments left. The last 2 tournaments of Olympic qualifying points. And we needed to basically medal and crush it, because we were ranked maybe like 6th or 8th in the world at that time, and normally that sounds pretty good.
And not in America.
Not in America, because there's a maximum of 2 teams that can qualify.
Right.
So April and Alex were 1 or 2, Carrie and Brooke were maybe like 4 or 5, and so we needed to beat them. It wasn't about finishing top 16 in the world, because that's how the Olympic top 16 usually go Olympics. So we had to do well, and I think kind of a breakthrough happened. We kept saying, like, breakthrough's coming. Like, I was like, I know it's coming. Like, the pieces are there, and part of it was like a confidence and also just like a steadfast belief. But we crushed it. It was kind of like a fairy tale story. 2 terms left, and we won back-to-back gold medals. So we knocked out Carrie and Brooke.
It was intense. I literally remember watching the stream, because I'll pop it on YouTube, like, when you guys are over there, and I remember watching the stream, and it was like, Carrie and Brooke have to win this, and but your team has to not get this, and you guys have to do this. And I remember watching, and like the match that Carrie and Brooke like lost that they couldn't lose, and like you guys were still going, and it was like okay, we're in kind of thing, and then it was like we compounded it by winning the tournament, and like we won the next one. It was like, it was such a wild situation. But when you knew you're going to the Olympics, for most people, they know for their countries a decent, amount in advance.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we're the top two, this team's out. Like, you guys were a little later in the process. So how long was it from when you found out to when the actual Olympics occurred?
Maybe a month and a half.
Yeah. So you go in not with the benefit of what April and Alex might have of like, okay, we're in, let's start prepping for the Olympics.
Yeah.
You guys are like, no, we're in a dogfight now. Yeah. We can't think about the Olympics. We have to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And so what was the biggest transition in you guys' team meetings, practices, preparation between we're trying to get there, okay, now we're in and we're going? Is there like a brand new preparation, or are you among the people who believe like, nope, it's the same old story, do what we did to get here? Is it a mixture? Like, what is it?
It may be a mixture, but I think preparation, like the entire year and a half with them, we were preparing for the Olympics.
Yes.
And so it didn't come as a surprise or shock. Obviously, like, it's a crazy timing and crazy way for it to happen. But the way we trained and prepared was with a mindset of when we get to the Olympics.
Right.
And obviously there is all three of like our first times making it to the Olympics, and so there's a little bit of naiveness and like not sure like how it all works.
Mm-hmm.
And so quickly is like trying to understand like, all right, when we get to Tokyo, we have 7 days to train. It's going to be 95 degrees, crazy humid, and we play every other day. Which is very new.
It's a funky cycle,
yeah,
right?
When you go to tournaments, you play sometimes two matches a day.
Yeah.
So that was actually pretty. Sometimes I beat myself up a little bit. Like, could I have like prepared us more for that? Just because you play one game, and then you're done, and you're kind of sitting there all day. Obviously, you watch film, do a scouting report. The next day you're off, and then all day you're just kind of like chilling again.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird like. You play, and then you have to like kind of like sit and chill for 2 days, and then like ramp up again.
Right.
Try to be prepared for that next game.
Yeah, it's hard to have momentum in that way, huh?
Yeah.
So you don't get the typical momentum that you do in tournaments. Like, we're playing great, we pulled it out against this team, we're compounding on that sort of thing. So you guys have like a beach volleyball director, like Tyler Lebrand is like involved, and he is just like a rock star in terms of like a volleyball mind, right? Like, he's one of the first guys who I ever watched on film when I started playing in the ninth grade. He's the first film I ever watched was him at Long Beach State, like doing just crazy stuff, and I'm like, this guy, he's got it. The flair, the flash, like, and the skills. And so now he's shifted over to being a really high-level coach. How does that relationship work? Because I noticed that when you guys go to the Olympics, the teams have their primary coach, right? You, and then Jason Lockhead for Phil and Nick, and people have their coach. How does that? What is the role there? How does that go down?
It's dependent on each individual team. They can use Tyler as much as they want, or they can be like, we'll do our own thing. So some teams, I think for the most part, everyone's pretty all in with Tyler. Tyler personally is like one of my biggest mentors. I think he's the best coach I've ever worked with, and like you said, just a brilliant mind. And I think the way he's able to like communicate with people and see the game is brilliant. And so we are on the side of like, we need as much help as possible. We will take all the help, and here's another coach with Olympic experience. Right. And so we try to use Tyler as much as possible. Okay. So he'd help us with trainings twice a week, and at tournaments he would show up. And I think he helped provide a lot of direction.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. That's cool. Yeah, I was just had a curiosity about that because I'd seen it on the TV when I was watching you guys. So, kind of deep diving into this final Olympic run, like, I watched some of the matches, but for the people out here who haven't or are going to go watch it on YouTube after what I'm talking here, like, there was a big match, was it against Brazil, that you guys pulled out, that you were the underdog, or maybe it was like evenly matched, but it was really like a must-win type situation. Was it against Rebecca? Did you guys play
that? Was this in the Olympics?
You'd have to tell me. I could be off track here. Like, I remember there being a match before the Canada match. It was a really big win for you guys.
Okay.
Do you happen to know what match?
Yeah, it was against Rebecca and Anna Patricia.
Was that at the Olympics?
It was at the Olympics. It wasn't a must win because that's still pool play.
Right.
So both teams.
In order to get first.
Yes.
Did you guys get first in order to get first? So like,
get first in our pool.
What would be the difference if you guys would have come out of that as a first seed or a second seed, like in terms of who you have to play first in the pool? Realizing everybody at the Olympics is good. So I don't want anybody here to be fooled. This is not like a youth volleyball tournament. Like everybody's good, but there's certain people you'd rather run into later.
Yeah, there's truth in that, and also we kind of had the mindset of if we want to win a gold medal, that's our goal. Then it's kind of like it's you can't try to play the
chess match.
We want to win this, so we match because we match up better with this teams. Like if a gold medal is truly our goal and our belief that we can do it, then you're going to have to beat every team.
Yes.
So for us, it didn't really matter if we got first or second who we played against. Canada still stings.
Yes.
We won the first set.
Yeah.
We're up 10-4 in the second set.
Yeah.
Up 10-4. And we kind of got a little shaky. We gave up 5 points in a row, and all of a sudden it's 10-9.
Yeah.
And so just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we had another chance, we weren't scared of playing anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back at it, like, what did you guys finish?
I think 9th.
And then we finished 9th.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to share, because maybe this is something that you keep between your team, but going back into it, what is one lesson, if you're willing to share, that you would take away from that Olympic experience if you were pursuing a gold medal again? You're at the game, say you make it again.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you would change? Or one thing you would add or do differently or put in the program?
Yeah. One thing, I'll start with one thing to add first. I think when I try to communicate with Kelly and Sarah, and for sure, I sat and I'm a big journal guy and reflecting, just what could I have done differently? And I think sometimes it's you're too hard on yourself and you're maybe taking too much credit for the impact you make as a coach, right? But one thing I wish I would have added is I think it's not enough for me to believe that these girls can go win a gold medal. I think it's them themselves that need to believe it. As a coach, you can only take them so far.
Sure.
Because I think that's where it comes back to the self-belief and that unwavering confidence.
Yeah.
When we're up 10-4 and then we give up 5 points in a row, that's not a lack of skill. I think that's something up here where we lose 2 points in a row and all of a sudden it's I'm playing like crap, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm not out there on the court with them.
Right.
They're the ones out there performing.
And so those of you who don't know, literally in beach volleyball, much like it is in tennis, coach doesn't get to sit there in the box. You're up in the stands and not able to have a conversation during these matches. So they are on their own. That is where it's different. And why for me it's more impressive and more pure of in basketball, your coach can call a timeout and come right over and talk to your face. They can be on the sideline, talking to you. Football, the same. But in sand volleyball, as a coach, does it feel helpless sometimes? When you're up there by yourself, and you're just looking down, I would want to be saying this in their ear or talking through like a quarterback type situation, but you don't have that effect. So it puts more, for lack of a better word, pressure on you as a coach to prep them in advance. Because you can't make in-game adjustments as much. It's you guys, you got to go with what we've talked about. So is there any kind of technique that you believe, because I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I'm I wanted to get creative on this, that's just the way my brain works, but for you, is there any sort of technique that you think that you could add other than having quotes, or things to just catch on to that could alleviate some of that disconnect?
Yeah. A word I use a lot is I really want to empower them to empower and equip them to problem solve themselves. And so something that I think that you can do as a coach if you're coaching sand is putting them in tougher situations and having them problem solve themselves. And so because you're not out there and because you can't bring perspective is how can you teach them in the moment in practices, and obviously it's different in games, to learn how to have perspective and to learn how to problem solve. Here's a game plan we have. I think game plans are tough because this is our scouting report, this is what we're going to do. But then, it can change after 2 points. And all of a sudden, you see some teams just sticking with the game plan. It's like, whoa, like get a feel for the game and see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
They're doing something completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that's the value of having an April Ross,
Right.
where she is kind of like the floor captain, coach,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think she has that experience.
Right.
And so that's something we definitely maybe struggled with a little bit as a younger team.
Now, are you a believer that a person, and when I say trained, I mean truly trained. I don't mean like gets better.
Yeah.
So as you like sit there and use April Ross, which has been a continuous reference point in this podcast, because she's just so great at what she does, right? It's like, do you believe that can be trained? Could you help a Kelly Clays? Could you help an anybody be trained into, I am now the coach on the court, I am the floor general, or do you believe it's something that's innate or not?
I think it's a little bit of both, but more so on the belief of I think it could be cultivated and learned.
And do you think that the primary necessity for it to be cultivated and learned is the person has to want that?
It's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's worth exploring. I think that's worth exploring. Like, I'm just so curious in these people who, it's my obsession.
Yeah.
The people who are hungry for I'm blank canvas, Chris. I want you to show me how to become my best.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, like, are you sure? That's what I ask. I go, are you sure? Because I'm going to lay you out the spark notes of what it looks like.
Yeah.
And some of these things are going to be like, oh, I don't know. And the moment you have that instinct, I'm telling you, you're not ready.
Yeah.
The moment your instinct is not like, okay, I'm down. Yep, please, more.
Yeah.
You're not ready. The moment you feel that hesitation, like, because that will come out, right?
Yeah.
So I look specifically at, let's use these two. Let's use Kelly Clays, let's use April Ross. Great players.
Yeah.
Different generations, different experience, but same tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And could potentially have to face each other easily. That was a possibility.
For
America
sure.
to face America. Like, when it gets to that stage, and it's like, okay, I'm younger, so I'm not going to fold to this person just because I'm younger.
Yeah.
I'm not as tall, I'm not as strong, whatever. I can't bench press, all those things, whatever. It's me and you. You have this trait. Innately, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you trained it. I don't know. I'm not in your practices.
Yeah.
But you have it. April, undeniable. Carrie, Misty, right?
Yeah.
You have it. I want what you have. I want gold.
Yeah.
I want that. And I've seen it done. I want to do it my way, but I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about essentially common denominators.
Yeah.
All these high-level athletes.
For sure.
What's a common denominator? They journal. They write. Okay. They have the coach on the court gene.
Yeah.
How do I get it? Like, that's a question I feel like too many people don't ask. Like, they look at the skills and the step back and the decision making, but the coach on the court gene, like, everybody great has it.
Yeah.
Like, and they're willing to show it. Jordan has it. He doesn't care how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Curry, he's a little bit of a lighter version, but he has it. Like, he has it. I'm going to make you feel my presence. Like, there's no question. So, that's a question I'd be interested to ask you. I'm like, 6 months from now, or even to, like, spend some time with you. And, like, and freaking fish through that. You know, is that possible? I totally believe it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Same.
I believe it's doable. Like, what does it take to write a book?
Yeah, I think it's the want piece, but also, like, what I would throw out is, I think more often than not, it comes from, like, trials and suffering and obstacles.
Yeah, the challenge.
And so, I'm a big fan of, like, trying to constantly bring challenge, because I think in order to increase your capacity, like, you need to be challenged.
Yes.
And so, when you face those moments of challenge, it's how you react to that. And I think the more you can overcome and conquer those obstacles that you once were kind of like the fight or flight mentality, right?
Yeah, you were crippled by it.
Then I think the more you start overcoming those, I think the more you start learning that trait that we're talking about, that the in-game coaching and confidence.
Yeah.
Because you even said something like, almost like worried about like what do others think, or like, am I disappointing other people?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you start like you're not confident in yourself, right? Because you're worrying too much about what other people think about you.
Totally. Frick, man. 6-phase process. Like, more people need to get on that. I'm saying, like, adding to yourself before adding to others. But bringing this back around to happiness and where you stand, dropping a bomb on the whole podcast here. So Jordan, as far as I know, is engaged to one of the players from his team.
Yeah.
Right? So how did that come about with whatever detail or lack thereof you want to share. Like, I think this is a huge concept. It's huge. It's controversial as hell, right?
Yes.
Like, it's huge. Why? And I want to get into, like, what is it that people can't seem to get about the connection between somebody being really impressive at their craft, whatever it is, and like how that translates to the way they live their life? Like, why is it hard for people to see if somebody is so impressive in their craft and I'm in the freaking front row seat to their grind and their work and their passion, like those are attractive things. Like, why are people not able to connect so frequently with like the simplicity in a decision like that? Like, of course I see the value. Of course I see the benefit in the drive. I'm front row seat, you know? Like, why is it that people seem to have this line in adult relationships of maybe it's inappropriate to coach and be in a relationship? Because it's something you see pretty typically in Brazilian culture, right? You see it all the time in Brazilian
surprisingly,
yeah, it's like in Brazil, arguably, other than America, is like top who's better in history. But bringing it back to your situation, like, 1, how did that come about? 2, what are your feelings on it? 3, do you have anything to share to the audience of like why you've made that decision? Not that you have to justify it, just helping them.
To clarify, I'm engaged with Kelly Clays, so one of his players, so no one's guessing. The redhead. It's so funny. Like, I would have never imagined this would happen. That I'd fall in love with my players.
Right.
And I love my coaching career so much, and I've worked hard for it. That I'm like, I'm not going to sacrifice my career for to endanger one, like the girl, but also like my coaching career. But I think I'm not sure I'd recommend it to people. It's definitely harder. But I've never been scared of like harder.
Right.
And my coaching personality and what I bring to the table is very relational.
Yes.
And so the nature of that, and I was like really trying to be cognizant of it, of like the more you get to know and dive into a relationship, I think the more feelings arise and attraction arise. Yes. And I think that's just human nature. Yeah. And so I got close with both Kelly and Sarah. And COVID hit, and I think that had kind of a deal where it played a part. But Kelly and I, eventually became very, very good friends / best friends. Yeah. And it turned into this all right, here's some feelings for each other. Yeah. With the last coach experience, it's kind of like something happened too, and so like we're both like, it is not worth endangering like this Olympic pursuit and the team, and the team is first. And then we found out the Olympics got postponed by a year. Okay. And it's just like, gosh, like how that's going to make it a lot harder to wait for another year. Right. But Kelly and I, we talked with Sarah, and it's kind of like, hey, like, team is first. The Olympic pursuit is first. And I told both girls, I'm like, I wouldn't coach you girls if I didn't think I was the right fit for the team. Right. And if I didn't think I was the right person to help bring you to the Olympics and win a gold medal. Right. We didn't win gold, but I think there's some other stuff, there. But like, if I thought that me coaching them took away value and hurt their chances at doing what we all have dreamed of doing, then I would be like, I'm out. Right. It's like there's no point in me coaching if that's going to hurt Kelly, like, who like I fell in love with. Why would I want to sabotage her playing career by coaching? Right. So it's a tough decision, and it's something that doesn't happen every day. And a lot of my friends are like, Jordan, like, you either gotta end things with Kelly or you gotta quit. Yeah. It was like very black and white. But like, this is what needs to happen. Yeah. And one of the guys I was helping out with their team, I think kind of turned into this unhealthy thing of like just going to him for advice, and none of us were talking to each other. I'm like, Kelly and Sarah, that's the partnership. Like that's the, like, they're the priority. Right. Their relationship is priority. Right. Right. My relationship with Kelly comes secondary because of our job. Right. Now in life, like, that's priority. Yeah. But in terms of like this job, that's secondary. Yeah. And so, I thought that me coaching them and having a relationship with Kelly, I thought added on value, and I think I believe I was the right person to coach that team. And so it was kind of like, Sarah, like, here's what's going on. Like, I can't imagine how you feel, and it's probably uncomfortable. And what do you think? And at first she's like, yeah, I'm pretty uncomfortable with it. And so like, all right, like we'll wait. But I think after a few months went by, she's like, hey, like I don't mind you guys dating. Like I'm all for it. And so that's when we started dating.
Right.
Because like, hey, we're not going to start dating if she's uncomfortable with it, right?
Right.
But it's like trying to navigate. That's also another thing to navigate.
Yeah.
With both Sarah and Kelly and the team, and trying to figure out how can we do this well. Like I don't think it was a distraction. I thought Kelly and I did a pretty good job of like being professional, and but there's always like you don't want Sarah to feel left out.
Totally.
So I think both parties had to agree with like what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, where are we now? You have, in such a freaking short amount of time, you've had all this experience, right? Like this is life stuff. This goes far beyond beach volleyball, these lessons we're talking about. So now, you're still in beach volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
You still are engaged.
Yeah.
You're getting ready for all these things. You're on your happiness train. Like, what is next? What's next? Like, what's next with your pursuit? What's next with the partnerships?
Mm-hmm.
What's next with navigating the waters? Like, what goals do you have? Like, what's next?
Yeah, my personal goal. I'm a big dreamer. I'm a big like visionary guy, and so I guess this might be a lot, but I want to be the best coach I've ever coached beach volleyball.
Okay.
And that's a little intangible, subjective, right? But I want to win more medals than any coach.
Okay. So you have found a way to measure it. Like, that was gonna be my next question. When people put out that stuff, my always next question is like, can you measure it?
Yeah.
Like, and so there is the subjective version of like, I feel like I'm the best coach, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But your objectivity towards it, is that for you being able to win the most medals? Is that most place it? Like, what for you is that?
Yeah, I think Olympic medals.
Winning the most Olympic medals.
But then that's just like a small sliver of the dream. I look up to a lot of these top coaches, like say like John Wooden. I want to leave a legacy like him, like the way he's able to create culture and the way people talk about him and the impact he's made on people. Yeah. A big part, like where my why in my heart is to build community within the beach volleyball world.
Okay.
And so I want to leave, I think, a legacy of having that similar impact that John Wooden had. But the difference is that I'm coaching two girls.
Yeah.
And us playing against April and Alex, like, it's hard to like connect and like build relationship because like, hey, like I want to beat the crap out of you.
Right.
And also like I don't want to like share like what we're share too much. Right. So it's kind of a fine balance and still trying to navigate that. Yeah.
And we are in such a society right now where people do share so much, right? It's like, I feel like competitively in professional sports, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was more competition. It was, hey, we're not hanging out. Like, I'm trying to spend my whole season beating your team and making sure you know. And now it's like, people play these matches and they're having breakfast before the match and lunch and dinner after the match, right? And it's a sticky situation to be in as a coach, I feel like. Players, it's the generation you're in. You roll with it. Hey, we're talking before the game. We're not sharing tendencies. I'll see you on the court. I'm playing against my brother. You think about like the crap situation.
Yeah.
I'll beat up on you and then I'll see you later at the house, right? But for a coach, that can be tricky to navigate. Like trying to figure out the relationship piece. And that leads me into like, with you as a coach, like right now you are engaged with somebody who you coach and it's working great because you've gone to the Olympics. You're shooting 1 for 1, for Olympic, appearances. So in seriousness, do you foresee yourself being the coach who goes out and recruits the top talent and says like, hey, I'm going to go pitch to you who I believe can be the best. I want to be your coach. Or do you sit back and do you wait for it to come or fill in the blank?
Yeah. I think with beach volleyball, it is such an interesting dynamic and process because the players are actually my boss.
Right.
And so...
I think it works that way in most pro sports now. Look at the NBA.
You're right. And so like they're the ones paying me, they're the ones hiring me. And so it's a little bit tougher for me to, say, go out and just recruit and like, obviously be like, I want to coach you. Yeah. But it's also reciprocated where like, they're the ones kind of choosing me.
Right.
And so with Kelly, I think the misconception is like, oh, because I'm married to Kelly, like obviously with Kelly comes Jordan, and
Right.
you have to choose Jordan as your
Right.
coach. But like it just so happens to believe like Kelly, like I think I can bring out the best in you,
Right.
and I think I can help you win, you know, multiple medals in the Olympics.
Right.
This isn't just for comfort level, because
Right.
I like hanging out with you.
Right.
You know, again, I wouldn't want to sabotage my future wife's career.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like partner choice, I think it's a iffy balance of like, whoever you choose, Kelly, like I want to try to convince them and build trust and have them believe in me as a coach versus like this feeling of, well, with Kelly comes Jordan, I guess I have to go with Jordan.
Right.
Yeah.
That's strong. All right. So, thing I want to kind of end with is the first thing we started with. So, for you, what is your ultimate goal? You said what it is. You want to be the best coach. But for you, how do you track that down? What do you think is necessary if there are 1, 2, or 3 keys?
I think, so here's like the big picture dream, and you gotta break it down by steps for me.
Okay.
And so, yes, I've been to the Olympics, but I think it's like, you know, we gotta win FIVB tournaments. We gotta, like, if we can win world championships, like kind of measurable stuff versus like, oh, I just dream of, you know, becoming the best Olympic coach. And
Right.
so we have to be on track for it to make sense to have that dream.
Right.
And so that's one of them. And I think another one that comes to mind is like I like have to constantly outwork everyone.
Right.
Just because I made it to the Olympics, like the game is constantly evolving and changing, and there's always going to be someone with more knowledge. There's always going to be someone that's better in many other areas than you, or someone that's naturally more gifted.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't want to be satisfied with where I'm at, and in order to dream this big, like you have to outwork people.
Right.
I think it's plain and simple, and then also just like have a growth mindset. And so the strategy I had with Kelly and Sarah might not make sense with another team,
Right.
right? And what's the world doing? Like Mole and Storm is a Norwegian team that for the men's they won the gold medal,
Yeah.
but they've shifted the game with how it's played.
Big time.
You know, I got to work with Phil and Nick for a few tournaments this past summer, and it's fascinating hearing Phil, probably one of the best blockers that I've ever played the game, kind of be like, well, like, learn from Mole and
Right.
see what he's doing, because Mole's getting 2.5, 3 blocks per set and
Right.
dominating the world tour. They won 12 gold medals in 2019, I think.
Right.
And now Phil's like, I gotta learn and try to figure out how to become more effective as a blocker.
Right.
So that was cool to hear like how growth minded Phil was, but also like the game's changing.
Right.
So in 4 years, it's gonna change again.
Yeah.
And I want to be ahead of the curve,
Yes.
outworking people, learning the game, and also I think for me, I'm big on like just personnel relationships and how to bring out the best in whoever I'm working with.
So anybody listening to this, where will they be able to find you if they wanted to follow your journey, support your cause,
Yeah.
get behind you and what you're trying to do? How can they find you?
I'm not a big social media person, and that might be a downfall, but I personally don't mind. So can't track me on social media. Yeah.
Love it.
You know, I think
Is there
just-
somewhere they can watch your teams maybe, or somewhere they can come see you in person?
Yeah, we train in Hermosa a bunch on
Okay.
16th Street.
Okay.
And that's
Hermosa
usually-
Beach, California.
Yeah, that's usually in the mornings, and Kelly has an Instagram, and so
Okay.
because we're in a relationship, like you'll probably get a good update on my life through her.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
Um,
So you can find Kelly Clays on Instagram, track down Jordan, 16th Street, Hermosa Beach, California. But I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's high level stuff, you know, that I'm all about. I'm all about like how to find the highest level, and it sounds like that's what you want to continue to pursue. I'm not going to disrespect you by saying that you're not already right there, going to freaking Olympics within a couple of years, man. Like, for me, like, I can't say that I feel the same as you and that I didn't see this happening for you. Like, I saw it pretty early, actually. Like, identified it, like, yeah, that guy could go pretty darn far, you know, in this craft. Because I am fortunate to have learned at a young age, like, the most talented person, even with, like, really good work ethic, rarely wins. It's the person who has the greatest work ethic. Like, I've really, like, studied that. And I've been like, well, if you have, like, a why is Michael Jordan the best? You know,
Yeah.
was he the most talented? Like, he jumped really high and he had pretty good touch, but he doesn't have the best touch.
sure.
He's not the tallest. He's not the strongest.
Yeah.
Like, and he wasn't even the number one pick.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it takes this just relentless. Tom Brady is a great example of that. Like,
Seriously.
not the most talented, right? It's
For
like,
sure.
it's not the greatest. And it's the same for coaches. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be the most naturally intelligent, articulate, fluid person. It's
Yeah.
like who will put in the work. So just hearing you lead with that, end with that, I think that's such a great message and an important one for the people listening to this. And I want them to walk away and take it seriously. You know, that's the biggest thing about hunting happiness is I don't want people to listen to a podcast and go, oh gosh, that was so refreshing to hear, like on to the next one, like fast news cycle. I want them to take it and add these things into their freaking life, right? Like, and understand this is where happiness will be created. So that's the goal of what we do here. If you guys want to hear more episodes like this, make sure you hit the like button, smash it, get in the comments, say what you enjoyed about this, hearing from JC, comments that you guys want to debate about in there, things that you want to hear about from the future. Chris P. Austin on all social media platforms. I'm really excited and glad that we could make this happen. We're going to have an episode 2 eventually with this guy because there's so much that we didn't get to hit. You got anything you want them to know before we leave?
No, that's all. Thanks for having me,
All right,
Chris.
man.
Appreciate it. Yep.